So we're gonna get started. We're gonna do first, I have a video from my partner, mi socio, David Cancel. He recorded something for us, a little message before we have our panel. So David is the CEO of Drift, revenue acceleration platform. You gotta get used to that. And so we're here to celebrate Hispanic Heritage Month. I think this is my first time celebrating this at this level, right? I think we've come a long way, and I'm have here accompanied by amazing Latinos y Latinas. We're gonna have a great day today. So let me play David's message, and then I'll introduce the rest of the panel.
Hi everyone, my name is David Cancel, and I'm the CEO of Drift, and I'm excited to be with you here today. So I'm going to take you through a couple numbers to start this off. So does anyone know what this number is? 1.8%. Well, 1.8% represents the percentage of VC-backed startups that are led by Latinx founders. That is an insane number to me, right? Only 1.8% of all VC-backed startups are led by people that look like you and I. Next number, 3%. Does anybody know what that number represents? 3%. So out of all the Hispanic-owned businesses, right, out of all the Latinx-owned businesses, only 3% of those generate more than $1 million per year. I have another number for you, 82%. Does anybody know what 82% represents? Well, according to studies, Latinos accounted for 82% of the growth in the US labor force population between 2010 and 2017. Think about that. 82% of the growth between 2010 and 2017 was because of Latinos in the United States, right? We as Latinos are currently and will increasingly become a critical foundation for support in the new American economy. And I want to share one more number with you today. And this is a number that is deeply personal to me. This is 10 years. Does anyone know what 10 years represents? Well, the reason this is so deeply personal to me is because it took me 10 years into my career before I met another Latinx person like myself. Think about that. I didn't grow up in the middle of nowhere. I was born and raised in New York City. My first couple of companies that I worked at in New York City, in Soho, Manhattan, were technology companies, but it took me more than 10 years into my career until I met another person that looked like me. Now, these were the days before LinkedIn. These were the days before you could Google search. I knew they had to be out there, but I never worked with anyone that looked like me, that shared the same background. I didn't work with them. I didn't see them as business partners. I didn't see them anywhere, right? Right? There was no LinkedIn back then. It was a totally different phase. And after 10 years of working in technology, I met my co-founder, who's going to speak later today, Elias Torres. So all of this has to change, right? And that's why we're all here today. And the thing that is most important to me and that drives me personally, as well as Elias, and I suspect most of the people here, is that we have to provide and become role models for future generations. Elias and I always talk about that as we grew up, it took me 10 years to even meet a person that looked like me. I definitely didn't have any Latinx role models. I didn't have anyone that I could turn to. But now, because we are all connected, we're all accessible, we have to become that role model, that set of role models for the next generation, the generation after that. And that's how we will fight, and we will systematically change what is happening to us in terms of disproportionate amount of us not getting funding, not being able to run businesses, not even knowing that it's impossible. And it all starts with every single one of us here today. So I'm honored to celebrate Hispanic Heritage Month with all of you here, and super excited that we've come together. And let's join in together in conversations with other Latinx leaders and make sure that they become role models, because it is our duty to become role models for the next generation. So thank you, but let's get to work. We have so much work ahead of us.
Yay! That was awesome.
That was awesome.
It's time to get to work, guys.
So let's get to work.
Amazing.
I'm going to now introduce the panelists. I'm going to start with Lolita. Lolita Taub. Is that how you say it, or is
Taub, yeah.
okay, got it. I don't know. That's how we say it. This is a long list of stuff. This is a very successful Latina right here that we have. There's a lot. She's done it all, and she continues to lead the way. She's the co-founder and general partner at the Community Fund. She brought me in to help there as well. I didn't know how that happened. She's a first-generation LatinX operator and investor pushing for diversity in tech. 15 years working in Silicon Valley ecosystem, 50 million in sales, 38 plus investments as an angel investor at Backstage, co-founder of the startup. I mean, there's so many things, Next Gen Ventures, Operators Collectives, Force, Entrepreneur, universities, You're Insane. And she has a dog named Choco, right? It's the cutest.
That's the important one to remember. He's the cutest.
And then just so you know how Latinos are, she comes into the green room, and the first thing she says, "Thank God you shower, Elias. It looks like you cleaned up." That's how we roll here. You know, spicy, definitely. We can say that. We can say that. Manny's not spicy. Manny is the salt of the earth. Manny is my brother from another mother. He co-founded Outreach in 2014. And he's the CEO now. Prior to Outreach, employee number 3 at AWS. Led the Microsoft mobile division from launch to 50 million in annual revenue. He's gone to the best schools, Harvard, Master's Computer Science. You did business and then did computer science, Manny?
I did computer science and then business.
Oh, I did it the other way around, and I still don't know how to program. Manny is a model for vulnerable and transparent leadership. That's how Latinos, those are the traits and the values that we bring to our companies. Transparent leadership to his employees, heartfelt weekly email to his employees, traditional Friday get together, whole company shares their highs and the lows, proponent of saving the planet, consuming less, and he purchased secondhand whenever possible. That's not me, but I appreciate Manny doing it. I'll send you some of my stuff.
Maybe a little tight, but yeah, show me.
I'm growing fast, don't worry about it. Manny grew up in Ecuador. He's a fellow Ecuadorian, like my partner Alejandra, and him and his wife have 3 children in Seattle. And those kids speak more Spanish than my kids, for everybody's information. Then we have Pedro over here. I recently met Pedro. Trisha introduced us, and amazing energy. Talk about salt of the earth too here. Lolita, you're salt of the earth too. I just want to say.
I'm good with the chili pepper. There's no salt emoji, so I'll stick with the chili peppers.
Jalapeños.
Jalapeños.
So Pedro is an entrepreneur, investor, board member, TED speaker, and author. Age 19, became the founder of Smiley Go, a platform that helps companies invest smarter. In 2017, Janet Napolitano awarded Pedro the University of California Entrepreneur winner. You became the CEO of Alpaca in Peru. You're helping women, empowering women to be like self-sustaining businesses from Peru, right? Selling into the United States. Please follow his journey. And at the age of 24, and we did a podcast together, it's on YouTube.
We did.
And then Pedro wrote a book with Jorge Titinger, with contributions from Eric Schmidt, Reed Hastings, and Pat Gelsinger. You are like a role model of what young people can do early in their career by not being shy and just going and taking risks and meeting people and hearing their wonderful stories. In 2020, his book received the Latino International Book Award, Best Business Book winners. I've never done this many introductions, but when we're with Latinos, this is how we introduce each other. We will say every single thing that we did and what we had for breakfast today. So now I get out of here and let everybody run this panel and have a lot of fun. Thank you for being here, my friends. Que vivan los Latinos.
Que vivan los Latinos. Gracias, Elias.
Gracias.
Yes.
Well, I'm excited, super honored of being here and sharing this panel and stage with our Lolita, Manny, and David's amazing video and words. And Elias, thank you so much, brother, for your friendship and support for our Hispanic Latinx community. Before we start with the panel, I'd love to learn your stories. So your immigrant stories, your backgrounds, and your hobbies. Lolita, please, could you start and share your story with us?
Yeah, so I'm first generation Mexican American. My family is from Jalisco. So I have the Los Ojos Tapatíos, if you guys all know about the Ojos Tapatíos. They're the most beautiful, is what they say. So first generation, parents came for the American dream. They were farmers. They came here with nothing and no one really, not even knowing the language. And they came so that I could have an education, my siblings as well. And, you know, fast forward, I started off in corporate tech, went into startups, VC, and now I wear two hats because nos gusta trabajar a los Latinos. And so I have a day job. I'm head of sales for a Series A startup, as well as Elias mentioned, the co-founder and general partner of the Community Fund, where we invest in pre-seed and seed startups that are community driven. And we just actually launched with our investment team that is so diverse, and I'm so proud of it. Elias is one of our investment partners, and we're so thrilled to start writing checks. So watch out, Elias is going to be writing some checks.
Woo! And Manny, hermano.
Yeah, I'm from Ecuador originally. I was born and raised there. I moved to the U.S. when I was 21 to come to. I finished college in the U.S. My upbringing is pretty sort of lower middle class from Ecuador. I was talking to another Ecuadorian woman that works at Next View Capital yesterday, and I come from a very politically left family. My parents were, you know, with the Workers' Party. I grew up, you know, marching on the Workers' Day. I grew up protesting. I grew up, you know, being very involved in sort of like the people's causes. My summers were spent in Bahia, which is a beach town in Ecuador, and I worked on and off at a shrimp farm that are sort of along the coast of Ecuador. And that taught me a lot about grit and resilience and working under the sun and, you know, just making it happen. I started outreach about in 2014, but outreach really a pivot from a company that we started in 2011. And, you know, we went through some dark days, and then once we hit outreach started, you know, growing really fast, and we're now in the Fortune Cloud 100 list, and, you know, worth over $1 billion, et cetera, and you know, very proud of what the team has done. I think a lot of my leadership styles and the things that Elias was very kind of mentioning comes from, you know, my upbringing in you know, being in Ecuador and being the kind of person I am, and yeah, it's part of who I am.
Awesome, Manny. Thank you so much for sharing your story, and Lolita as well. Our, you know, Hispanic heritage, and I think those are the beauties, like our stories and anecdotes, right? As Elias was saying, sharing what we had for breakfast. And by the way, I was cooking lomo saltado the other day for any of you who love Peruvian food.
My favorite.
And going off what Manny and Lolita were sharing about building our network, our community, or nuestra tribu, right? Our people from scratch. I'd love to learn what are tangible steps to build these, right? Because especially for immigrants, we were not born here, and so we didn't grow up going to high school here, or at least myself, I didn't go to high school or anything here. What were some tangible steps that helped you, Manny, and then we can take it to Lolita, to build this community, right? Because you've raised more than 200 million in venture funding, Manny, and kudos to you and your team. What helped you to build your network?
I had to start from scratch in that, you know, I didn't take the problem of not having a network as an impediment. I just took it as a, you know, as what we have. And what I have is I don't fit the pattern. I'm not going to raise from VCs at the very beginning, because they're going to look at me and they're going to say that, you know, you look like my gardener. Like, why are you here in front of me pitching me an idea? So instead of going to VCs, I went to angels. And if there's one thing that Latinos can do very well, is we get people to like us. You know, we are very friendly. We're very warm. You know, and even I'm a little, you know, sometimes I'm not the warmest person, but a lot of people kind of like me. You know what I mean? And they ask me what's my superpower, and it's like, I can get you to like me. And because of that, I was able to raise almost $1 million in angel checks. Mind you, it's $1 million in increments of $10,000 to $20,000. That's a lot of friendships. But what it does is that for every $10,000 that you get from somebody like Elias is going to vouch for you to 10 other people. You see what I mean? And so like the network builds pretty quickly when you actually take money from other people and you ask them to introduce you. All of a sudden you're being introduced as a confidant, as a friend, as somebody you can trust, because I just gave you 10 grand. And that allowed me to build a network. By the time I came to fundraise, you know, it was a kind of like somebody would walk me in and being like, you better give this guy some money, you know? And that's how the whole thing started. So I feel like we should take, you know, we should sort of like embrace our current situation and use it to our advantage, because it's actually easier and faster to build a network of a lot of many angels like Lolita than you know, trying to make a break, you know, into VCs right away.
Thank you, Manny. Yeah, Lolita, please.
I love what Manny just said. It's starting where you are and leveraging the multiplier effect once you do establish relationships. I spend a lot of time as both an angel and a VC out of the community fund talking to founders about underestimated founders about where to start, because many of us in our communities, not just Latinos, but underestimated founders in general, we struggle because we're starting from nothing, like Manny. So where do you go? What do you do practically? When I think of that, it's really, how can you leverage? Prior to COVID, it was how could you go to events and meet people and you know, these kind of things. But now in this COVID world, I think the best thing to do is to join events like this, start relationships. You know, everybody who is here in the chat can chat with the speakers, can chat with each other, leverage opportunities to start building relationships with the right people. And I think it's really important to have an idea of who you want to connect with before you go and network and what your goal is. So if your goal is to raise capital, then you may just make a target list of angels and actually just start going out for them. People in the industry will say, don't cold email, don't cold call, but you know what? Some of us don't have another choice than to start in a cold outreach. So for those of you who are listening, you may be startup founders, you may not be, but it applies all the same. Look for social environments where you can connect with the people that you want to connect with. That's number one. If that's not an option, or for whatever reason, you're just still getting started, but you do know who you want to reach out to, feel free to try LinkedIn. It may not work. Like, all of these tactics may not work, but in the chance that they do, that's where you start building this capital, social capital. So you can do it on LinkedIn, on Instagram, on Facebook, on Twitter, wherever the people that you need to be meeting, get on there. And the best way to build relationship in my book is to just start having communication. Learn about the people as human beings first, because whether we're investors or founders or whatever we are, before that, we are people. We are humans who like to eat our huevos rancheros. Those are my favorite. You know, in the morning, and we want to connect with people and build relationships so we can invest in the people, and especially if it's early stage, rather than just a transaction where if I were to message you and say, hey, can you give me some money? You're like, no. But if maybe you include me in conversations, you reply to my tweets or whatever, now we're building a relationship. So I encourage you to find those social environments to build relationships and be thoughtful about what you ask, as well as find ways of adding value. Always the whole trope about giving first and then receiving after, it's been so true for me, and it doesn't always work, but you've got to start somewhere.
Right. It's very true in angel investment that most people fall in love with the emotional bond with the person before they fall in love with the idea or even the opportunity to invest or even the size of the market, et cetera. As a matter of fact, it's common in sales and in investing that you form an emotional decision first, and then you justify it with data. Oh, I invested in Lolita because she has a huge market and she's a proven entrepreneur, blah, blah. No, I just like her. You know what I mean? I just want to have a conversation with her because every time I talk to her, I feel really good about myself. So like, that is the justification that brings you into the investment, and it works all the time. And it doesn't have to, you know, I totally agree with what Lolita said. It doesn't have to start with like the investment. It could start with like, tell me more about your experience. You know, most people who invest already had an experience either investing or in other sort of like startups or bigger companies, and then just ask for that advice is super helpful. So what I did when I raised the first amount is I went through everybody who invested in companies like Look Like Me in Angel List. And Angel List will give you all the angel investors. So you take that list and then you put it in LinkedIn, and then you reach out to everyone in LinkedIn, and then, you know, set a goal of like how many conversations you're going to have a day. You know what I mean? And set yourself accountable for that goal and make sure that they are conversations. You know what I mean? That you're coming in being, open to learn, open to inquire, and open to like form the human bond. And then the investment sort of flows down the funnel. Like, you ask for an intro and then the person gets interested. Like, what are you working on? Oh, I got this startup that's working on this thing. Oh, this is really interesting. I'm happy to invest. So like the entire conversation sort of happens organically. You have to get after it. Like it won't come to you. You have to go after it yourself.
Yeah. And one thing to add is I think that nobody talks about this. At least I don't hear it enough, but our Latino community, we have a special gift. Sometimes people have probably told you talk too much, or you're getting into stuff, or your conversations are circular, but all of that is actually a strength of building relationships and connecting with people. This energy that we have inside of us and being Latinos is such a superpower, so lean into it. It's not going to be everybody's cup of tea, but you're not going to be everybody's cup of tea ever. So lean into the strengths that we naturally have in our community and the way we approach in building relationships, because it's actually quite refreshing versus having and meeting with people that look like this all the time. And then they're just like, tell me about your stats. And you're like, I don't care. I don't want to build relationships with you. So lean into who you are. We have a lot of strength in our community.
I love that. I love how you're focusing on being relational first and like then transactional. It reminds me of a quick story. When I first met angel investor, I was in a Berkeley freshman cafeteria, and I see this 80-year-old man wearing a suitcase. And so I'm like, oh, what is this businessman doing at a college cafeteria? So I sit next to him because my mom would say, júntate con los mejores, siempre ofrece la mano. I'm like, hi, can I sit next to you? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, why are you eating at a freshman hall? And he's like, oh, my board meeting got canceled. And he said, oh, what board meeting? He's like, I'm a trustee at the University of California. And I was like, oh, wow, you're a pretty important person. And then I see an American flag and a Uruguayan flag here. And I'm like, I'm from Peru, and I've not been to Uruguay, but I've been to Argentina and Brazil. And he's like, I was the ambassador to Uruguay under President Bush. And so our conversation changed from English to Spanish, y nos hicimos amigos. And then guess who was the first person to invest in my first startup outside my family and friends? It was him, Frank Baxter, the former CEO of Jefferies Investment Bank and ambassador to Uruguay, and very successful person. But going further with these stories, Manny and Lolita, thank you for sharing. And Lolita, thank you for doing that Medium article of being resourceful. As you said, your mommy really helped you in doing all this list of founders.
I'll share it in the chat for everybody to check it out.
Yeah, please put it in the chat. Digging deeper, Lolita, my question for you first is, what are some best hustling practices, digging deeper to fostering these relationships? What are like do's and don'ts?
In fostering relationships, so what I think I'll just recap on what I said in a more succinct manner. Know what you are looking for and know who you want to connect with. Do your homework and figure out how you can add value. And then try it out, because your hypothesis may be wrong. But I'll give you an example because Elias is on the phone. But so Elias and I kind of met online, and then I stalked him a little bit. And I said, Elias, I want you to be an investment partner at the fund that we're launching. And he didn't know me at all. And I just started to do some homework. Hey, what's important to him and how can I add value to him and him joining us at the community fund? And he's here to maybe let you know how that went on his side. But he literally told me, he's like, if you want to build a relationship with me, then, I like people who text me. And I was like, all right, I'm going to text you. And so I started texting him. I'm not really a big texter, and I don't really think he is either, but he likes texting. So I was like, okay, cool, whatever. And we built a quick conversation, like a relationship. And now we're working together. We're on this panel, and I look forward to many, many years of working with Elias. But every single person that you're going and building a relationship with, I think being thoughtful, not just like, let's see who I meet. No, that's not the right way. So things not to do, just going after people and asking them the same question without doing homework. I think it's so important to be thoughtful about who you're talking to, how can you add value to them, and how can you build that relationship. So those are do's. Don'ts are spamming people without knowing anything. Because a lot of the time it makes you lose credibility instead of help you in developing a relationship. And the other no is asking something as the first wave of interaction. Nobody likes it when someone's just like, give me something. I don't know you, but give me something. It's just nobody likes that. So those are my do's and don'ts. And Elias, do you wanna jump in and talk about how we became friends? Because this is like immediate like storytelling, and you're involved.
Totally embarrassing me in front of my team over here, but yes, no, I mean, I think, yeah, I don't want to, there's so many good things you guys are saying. I want to leave you to it, but I think that I get a lot of emails, I get a lot of stuff on LinkedIn, and people are like, just, can I just schedule a meeting with you? And they provide no value, they do no homework, they do no research, they're like, just tell me your story. And so that doesn't work, right? It's like, you have to put some effort and you have to bring some value into the relationship. That's different with Manny. Manny, I just ask him for favors all the time for him, but that's different.
But it's different with you and me, because Elias was in Seattle, and he literally just asked me to come over and to stop by, and like I don't know him. He's like, I want to stop by, and he's like, oh sure, why not? So he stopped by, and we realized we have so much in common. And then the next thing he's like, why don't you come over for dinner? I'm like, dude, you live in Boston. I'm in Seattle. And he's like, yeah, let's do dinner. So lo and behold, I jump on a plane like the day after, and then within 48 hours, I'm at his house eating dinner. And then not only I walk out, but his wife gives me like a bag of food of like this pan de yuca, which is something delicious from Ecuador that we don't have here. And she just gives it to me. I was like, oh my God, this is like the best experience, the best week ever. Yeah. So you have to the Lolita's point, like you have to lean in this like intuition and drive of making a human connection that may evolve in many, many things. And, you know, we've been good friends since then. And, you know, I always respond to whatever we need. And I'm a huge supporter of what he's doing. I think he's driving this, you know, community of Latinos in tech almost, you know, with a lot of power. So, and I'm just, you know, excited to be along for the ride. So
whatever you need, you call me, Manny. Text me.
That's right. That's right. I'll text you.
Loving it. And now moving on to more deeper stuff about being memorable. I remember, Manny, our conversation last time, you said that focusing on one-on-one, and Lolita was saying less is more, quality over quantity. Perhaps, Manny, can you share a bit more tips on being memorable in your one-on-ones with the angels and stuff?
Yeah, so it's really important that, you know, as you're building your network, the first thing that you need to make sure is that A, you form a connection with that person likes you, but B, that they remember you for something. So, you know, it's hard to sort of plan how to be memorable, right? Like that doesn't come across as natural. But it also it's hard if you don't become memorable, because you become one more of the pile, right? Usually the people you want to talk to are busy, A, and B, everybody else wants to talk to them. So you need to figure out how to stick out from everybody else with a story, with a connection point, with something that gives them value, that they remember you uniquely. So it could be, you know, maybe you're good at telling stories. Maybe you have a very, you know, maybe you're from a country that other person wants to know more about. Maybe you are, you know, into some kind of food. Like find something that is very distinct about you and drop that in the first meeting. You just give it as a gift, because that will create the memory hook for you to get the second meeting and the third meeting and the intros and the lifelong friendship. But not having that makes you incredibly boring. So don't talk about, to Lolita's points, like don't talk about, if you have an idea, don't just talk about your idea. Don't just talk about your market. Don't just talk about your traction. Don't just talk about your credentials. Talk about, you know, given something that is different and unique about you, and that will get you to a lot of places. So in my case, you know, I tell the story of you know, how I came to this country. I tell the story of where I grew up. I tell the story of working at a shrimp farm. Not that many people work at a shrimp farm, and working at a shrimp farm is a particular kind of job. I don't know if anybody knows this, but you can only harvest shrimp at night, because if you harvest during the day, it goes bad really quickly and starts stinking. So you have to harvest it at night and then bring it to the packing plant within, you know, 20 minutes. So there's all these things that, you know, I just gave you value right now. You're going to remember me for this. I'm going to be Manny, the shrimp farm guy. But that's fine, because now you have a hook.
That's such a great point. I will remember that you were a shrimp. Do you call it, what do you call shrimpers?
Camaronera.
Camaronera. See, but in English, what is the profession? Like, I don't even know.
No, I think that's a profession.
It's just a profession.
If a Forrest Gump did.
I think Elias is talking and he's muted, but shrimp farmer, there you go. Elias, were you going to say something too about shrimp?
Nothing. I'm out.
I love shrimp, so I am definitely going to remember that, Manny. I think one way to think about it for yourself, for the audience, one way that I always encourage founders to leave that impression is actually by talking about the vision and the connection between who you are and what you're doing. I think that's something that can also be really authentic. And so if you have something really cool like Manny, that's great. But if you don't, like I don't have a shrimp story, I have an avocado story. We had an avocado tree when I was growing up, and when we didn't have food, we just like my dad would climb up there and I would hold this like gallon of paint. It was not filled with paint, but you know, those plastic bins. And my dad would like go up the tree and get avocados, and sometimes that's what we ate. So that's my story there, if you want to remember me for that. But what I usually tell founders is if you're able to tell your vision, that connection between your authentic self, why you're building what you're building in immediate conversation without telling your whole life story, that leaves such a huge impression for investors in particular, because I look at decks every day, all day, and they all kind of start looking the same. But what's really different is when a founder is able to connect who they are, why this is the thing they're going to spend their life doing. And that is like a magical moment. Of course, if you have some other kind of corollary when you're just meeting someone and you're just like, oh, there's just something in that we have in common. Like for us Latinos, I think one of the easiest things to have in common is probably that we love food and that we love building relationships over food. So you probably won't miss out on that. But in the broader sense, just thinking about how can you be authentic? How can you leave someone with something that's different than what that vanilla answers and presentation of who you are is in that approach.
Awesome, Lolita. And I have an additional question for you, because I remember in our conversation, you talked a lot about being resourceful. And as people of color or immigrants and minorities, like we have to be super proactivo. And in Peru, we say pilas, no? Como the Energizer bunny. What are some...
We say that in Mexico too, or here in my house, we say, tienes que tener pilas.
Sí, yeah. So, you know, I'm curious.
I love, hold on. I love how Lolita goes like this. Tienes que ponerte pilas. It's just so intense. And like, I'm already like, hard stuff.
So what are some tangible steps to break things down super complex into simple things, right? Like being resourceful. Do you happen to have like a story about this, of how to be resourceful as a powerful Latina? Like you build your venture fund, and as you said, you hired Elias and other people, like bringing top leaders to your fund.
Yes, I like how you said that. Manny liked it too. No, so in terms of being resourceful, I think this is really also a strength of our community. If I hadn't had my mom and my dad in my community, I would not know the word resourceful. When you go out and start your company and you start fundraising, you hear all these investors talking about gritty people who can do more with less. I don't know any other community who can do so much more with so little. So lean into that again. So what do I mean by resourcefulness? We didn't have food, so we saw a tree and my dad got the avocados. That's an example of it. In the startup world, when you don't know anyone, you're like, you know what, I can get into this free event, and then I can connect with them. When we were in pre-COVID world and I was just starting my career, sometimes there were these really expensive conferences where I knew I could meet the right people to elevate where I was or trying to get to that next milestone. And what I would do is I would literally reach out to the event coordinators and say, hey, I would like to volunteer. And there were points where I was the volunteer where I was just taking names at the beginning of an event in exchange of being able to access really powerful people who could give me that in. So that's one example. Today, again, it would be literally being resourceful and scrappy could be reaching out to an event that you really want to go to, but you don't have the money for, and just saying like, hey, I can't afford this, but I really want this because of this. Here's maybe something that I can do for you. I will tweet throughout the event. Just find a way of adding value in exchange for something that you want that may not be accessible to you. And they could look so many different ways, I'm particularly focusing on the networking because social capital, I think, ends up being a lot of what holds us back. But I'm sure you can think of a million things because we are the most resourceful people on earth. The end.
I completely agree. I think that being resourceful is, so first of all, is what you need as an entrepreneur, period. But I think for the rest of us, especially Latinx and us and the people of color, that we're starting from behind, right? Like we don't have a platform to stand on. It's like, we don't have families or friends that come with money, have been there and done it before. So you have to find out ways for you to connect faster, broader than everybody else, so that you can get to whatever you're going. One of the things that I did really early in outreach, when we had no money, and nobody would give us money, is that I would trade outreach licenses for people used to buy contact lists, and they have subscriptions to contact lists. I would trade them. I would say, hey, if you're not used to all your credits, I'll buy your credits from you for a couple $100. I'll trade you an outreach license for the remaining credits of your this contact list. That would allow me to go into a contact list and generate 100 names of VPs and CEOs that would allow me to get sales going. You know what I mean? Or allow me to get interest and to get sales going. So the ability to just figure out for somebody's leftover is like for you a prime meal. You see what I mean? So like somebody's unused credits is for me like my demand gen engine, because I don't have money to buy it. And I can do something for you. I'll tweet, like you said, or I'll do something on LinkedIn for you, or I'll give you a license of outreach, whatever you need in exchange for that list. And being that, having that mindset that nothing is wasted and everything is valuable I feel like it serves us well for us to come from nothing.
Very good point, Manny and Lolita. This reminds me like negotiation, right? And sometimes for the other party, it may not be super important, but for you it is. And I had a client of mine that's like a multinational software company. And for them, like writing on their LinkedIn about my book was easy, right? Because they have thousands or millions of followers on LinkedIn. And for me, that was like, wow, that would be really valuable for me. So finding those, as you said, right? Like esos puntos importantes for you that may not be as important for them and making it happen. So I have a follow-up question for both of you, Lolita and Manny. Talking about social capital, there are some quotes, and when I was writing my book that, it's not about your net worth, but your network. And it's about like who you know, and especially for underrepresented groups, right? And I read Lolita's Medium article about, single-digit percentages of venture funding goes to Latinas and founders of color. We could start with Lolita, perhaps. Like, what are some ways where we could leverage our social capital, and especially when you're an introverted person? Because clearly the three of us are super bubbly and proactivos and pilas, and Elias as well, he's a rock star. But what would your advice be for some, people who are not as extroverted, but to build their social capital?
Yeah, I loved in our prep call with Manny, I love what he said about, I really love doing one-on-ones. And although Manny is very versatile, right, and he's not an introvert by any means, but I like this approach for those of you who may not want to be seen, who may not want to write, because that's also actually a big hack, just starting to write stuff and becoming a thought leader in your space, putting out a Medium, newsletters, whatever. Everything is so accessible that you can do all these things for free in exchange for your time, of course. But if you are more introverted, writing can actually be a really great way of expressing yourself. Twitter is filled with people who are introverted because they don't want to talk. They just want to, be on Twitter. And that's okay. So find the method that's going to work best for you. Is it going to be trying to get on panels? Because also panels can give you access to get introductions to other really awesome people. Like, I'm going to become friends with Manny, and I'm telling Manny this. Maybe I'll send him some food and then we could be best friends forever. But this is how you also like make friends. You literally can just say, hey, I'll go and do this for free, but then you get access to certain people. I promise not to stalk you, Manny, but I am a fan. But there's that. But if you're introverted, you can write a Medium, you can start a newsletter, you can tweet, you can write emails. It's okay. You just honor who you are for sure, but find creative ways. That's where the scrappiness comes in to integrating it into who you are. Never deviate from who you are. I think it doesn't work for anybody. I've never seen it work, and it makes everybody just like feel less energy, and las pilas will be off and dead very fast. So do you, for sure.
Yeah. And that's this is a great point, in that I'm not very good. I mean, I'm better now because from experience, but I'm not very good in settings in which I walk into a room with, you know, a bunch of, you know, old white men looking at me. Like I don't feel that connection. You know what I mean? Like I don't grow up like that, so I don't have that attachment. But one-on-one, I'll kill it. Like I'll be very, I'll make that time a good time for the other person, and that person will remember me. So on a one-on-one basis, I'm a much better communicator and storyteller and human being that I am in front of, you know, unknown faces I just don't like, you know. Especially, I think that we have, I don't know if this is true or not, but, you know, at least for me, I didn't grow up in this country. So when I go outside, my surrounding environment doesn't look like where I grew up in. You know, there's just not enough color. And when I walk into a room when there's no one of color, then that really makes me, I can feel my anxiety level just rising, right? And I have to like calm myself down purposely, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But just bottom line, I'm not gonna deliver my best self. You know what I mean? So to Lolita's point, like put yourself in a situation in which you are primed to go, you know, to get your best, where you're at a 10. If you're not, then, you know, avoid those situations so that you can always be at a 10.
Definitely. And now we're just gonna go through like the short takeaways. And what would be the top 2 or 3 takeaways from today, Lolita, in terms of building your network from scratch and building your personal board of advisors? La unión hace la fuerza, right? Unity, strength, and big thanks to Elias for building this Latinx community of digital hustlers and go-getters.
Yeah, I think the biggest shortcut is, to your point, Pedro, coming in and joining communities that you align with, that you identify with, like this community that Elias has built, and we are all part of. That allegiance to a community makes it so it's so much easier to support each other, because we're like, hey, we're coming from maybe slightly different places, but kind of the same place. And it gives us that ability to say, hey, I can relate. I know the struggles, so I'm going to give you a hand. So that's probably the biggest hack and takeaway, because as you saw here, we told stories about how we became friends and how we're taking over the world soon. And that's really the biggest takeaway, right? Like, be human and leverage the community as much as you can.
Thank you. And Manny?
I think that you have to set, you have to sort of have a vision for what it is that you want to do, like a very crisp vision. Like, you know, when Elias and I connected around, you know, what he wanted to see happen, the change that he wanted to create, he wanted to say, I want to be the face of the new corporate America. The face of the new corporate America is younger, is more diverse, it has more colors, has more women in it, just has, you know, he had a vision of what he wanted to get done, and he just like starts plowing through it. And he may end up in you know, in places where he doesn't want to be, but at least he knows where he's going. And I think that you have to be purposeful about what you're trying to do. You're trying to raise funds, you're trying to get clients, you're trying to build your network. Have a goal, have a vision of where you want to be, and just continue, be relentless about doing that. And then set yourself daily goals about how you're going to get there. So for me, when I started, it was how many conversations I'm going to have per week. And even before then, how many people I'm going to reach out to that I'm very uncomfortable reaching out to. And then how many of those are going to turn into conversations? How many of those are going to turn into other conversations? And as things got better, then how many interests am I going to get from those people? And then just track it. Like, you have to be super diligent with yourself, and you have to hold yourself accountable, and then have all your friends hold yourself accountable and ask you all the time, kind of like Lolita's mom, of like, you know, where are you this week? Where are you this week? You know what I mean? Like, and make sure that you got your pilas on, because otherwise you're not gonna make progress. Remember, we're starting from behind, so you gotta put in the effort.
Yeah, I actually really love that. And I'd love to add something else to what Manny just said, because along with knowing what you want, one thing that's been really challenging for me to get to, but it's something that I continuously work on, and I recommend everybody work on as well, is your vision and your mission as to why you're here, because that will get you out of bed every day, whether it's a good day, a bad day, or in the middle. And for me, for example, it's about pushing for diversity in tech. And to me, that means right now increasing the number of the dollars going into underestimated founders, as well as increasing the number of investors that come from underestimated backgrounds. And so getting as specific as you can with your goals will certainly help you get there faster, because otherwise, if you have a vague goal, you're going to have a vague output, a vague result. So but it takes a lot of time. So do be patient with yourself, but the cleaner you are with where you're going, the faster you're going to get there for sure. And look, persistence, one last thing, la persistencia is something that we have in our community where we're just like relentless and we're like, no. And it might be because we're stubborn, some of us, maybe just me, but I think that's also another strength of our community. We're just like, nope, we're going to go for it. We're going to go get it, and it's going to happen. So let's use all of those strengths to our advantage.
Thank you so much. Thank you to both of you and to Elias and ALPFA as well for co-sponsoring this event, and Drift for sponsoring the first 35 books. So we're going to raffle 35 books that I wrote with a Latino co-author. So we're going to go ahead and go to Q&A. And the first question that we have is, where did you start? What was the moment, job, relationship that changed your career?
Lolita, you want to take that?
Oh gosh, this one's a reflective one. Maybe, yeah, I can think about it. So when I was in university, actually, it was actually a Latino who introduced me to the world of technology. And I was the first person in my family to graduate from college, so I had no idea what I was going to do. My parents, they were going to be really happy and proud of me if I finished high school. So by the time I went to college, I was just doing what I could, but really had nobody to guide me. And it was a Latino executive at IBM who really helped lead me into this thought of, hey, you can also be in technology. And I went to USC, so I'm a Trojan, fight on, for any of you out there. But he mentored me and he said, look, Lolita, I see that you like technology. Did you know that you can be part of it? Because there's so many stories that we get told about where we belong and where we don't. And he really mentored me and sponsored me. And there was actually a diversity inclusion initiative at IBM. And it was through that program that I got into technology. And it was this person who decided to pay it forward. And when I was always so grateful. And I always said, Hugo, his name is Hugo Peroso, and he's actually Venezuelan, not even Mexican, but, Latinos, we stick together. And he said, I said, hey, Hugo, what can I do? You have changed my life and the life of my family, because I am the matriarch and I take care of my family financially. So this man changed my life forever. And he said, I just want you to always pay it forward. And that's what I always try to do, because honestly, the only way we're going to get to that next step is by helping each other up.
Thank you. Thank you. Manny, would you like to answer that question too?
I don't. So I was using the time to think about what had happened to me, and there's so many people who have helped me that I can't really point to anyone. There was this woman who helped me get into Harvard, for instance, that read my reviews and told me all the tips and trips on how to get there with nothing to gain. She just literally, she said, no, I'm helping you because somebody helped me. And once I got into Harvard, somebody paid for my second year out of nowhere. They just yeah, one day I got an invitation saying, yeah, so-and-so from Goldman Sachs paid for your second year. And there's so many magical moments of somebody who just reaches down and helps you without knowing you that, I can't wait to start doing the same thing. You know what I mean? Of just starting to help, people in general of that I have no attachment to, because I was helped that way. There's always somebody who sort of pulls me up, right? Like there's this woman who is now on my board, Sarah Imbag, who invested really early in us. But because she invested, then she got some other woman to invest. Her name is Ellen Levy. And Ellen Levy, if you Google her, she's the most connected woman in Silicon Valley. You know what I mean? So by one, it led to the other. And then by having Ellen opened up all the VCs. And all of a sudden, I'm a thing. So the fortuitousness of life is just too entangled to just call the one silver bullet versus the other. So many people you have to pay back that your best bet is to just pay back to society. Just like go and start helping willy-nilly, because you won't be able to like decouple how you got here.
Great question. We have a couple more. I think this is a really good question from Lorraine. You talked about the importance and influence of building a personal relationship with your network before anything. What have you done in the past to break through the noise in order to build a genuine relationship?
Yeah, so it looks different for different people. So I try to give an example with Elias, right? So I did my homework with Elias, and I want to poke at him because he's here. But he's a great example, right? Every person's going to be so different, but I do try to do my homework because everybody's so busy. And like Elias said, and you'll see all of us who are on this panel, we get hundreds of emails and LinkedIn invites and DMs and all of this. Why should we respond to you? I know it kind of sounds weird, but the reason is that we only have so much amount of time that we can devote to doing things outside of our core work. And then also to have time to sleep, eat, and spend time with our family. So in order to really make it something that we want to engage with as human beings, we need to make that extra effort so that we also feel good about making that extra effort. Because to Manny's story, to my story of those people who have helped us without really having to or gaining anything, it was that they saw something in us and they wanted to help us out. And so help us see something special in you. And maybe not me, but somebody else. Help them see why you are the person to invest in. Even if it's not capital, it's just a relationship building. Because time is of the essence. Time is so limited. And especially today, I'm sure everybody's like stuck in back-to-back Zooms. And that one extra meeting can mean 30 less minutes with your kids or your family or your abuelitos or whatever. And so being really thoughtful about that, and that we or others are going to be cognizant of that. The best way to build relationships is to do your homework. Search for everything that's online. Watch their videos. Read their book. Read Pedro's book, and then reach out to him with a really great question. He'll probably answer because he's like, yes, you read my book. Be thoughtful about what people are doing. If it's Manny, be like, oh my God, I love that you worked with shrimp, and I also did the same. And you probably find a connection where it's genuine. But make it authentic so that it's something that's truly in your heart, right? I can't talk to Manny about shrimp because I told him, I'm like, I don't know, I just like to eat them. But make it personal and make it honest. And that is the best way to build any kind of relationship in my book.
Awesome. The last question, and then we're gonna give the mic to Elias, and perhaps Manny, you can answer this. Both of you have done amazing work in the US. Is it also important to you as Latino to have some sort of connection to the booming tech entrepreneurship ecosystem in Latin America? Why or why not?
I think it's important to the degree that you feel it. I feel connected to Ecuador because I'm from there, but Ecuador didn't give me the opportunities the US did in terms of starting a company, building capital, becoming who I am. Matter of fact, I don't think I could have done this in Ecuador because, the social economic distance between where I am and what success needs is just too large. So I think that there is, I think I have the impetus to help, because I feel for, my family, I feel for my friends, I feel for the people that I grew up with. But I don't know that, sometimes this is used as a kind of like a browbeating stick of browbeating stick of like, oh, you should go back and help and be helpful. No, if you feel it, go help. If you have an angle, go help. I would love to start, I would love to figure out how to bring, and Elias sort of got me into this, and how to sort of you start the same way that India started taking some jobs, and that began as sort of hard and then continue to get better over time. I think that we should do the same thing, and we can start moving some jobs to the countries that we care about. We as job creators have that capacity to do it, in which you can start apportioning some amount of development jobs or sales jobs and support jobs, and do it as your heart calls you, but don't use it as a well, you have to get back to where you came from, because you have many other debts in life that you want to pay back.
Cool.
I know Lolita, if you agree.
Yeah, I was just writing 100% on being authentic. Like, I think one thing that we can get caught up in is that we have to help everybody, or at least I know that I have fallen in that trap, I guess I should call it, because that's just who I am. I always was taught to help everyone around me in my community and bring us up. But I think there's a distinction, and one of my mentors, Arlen Hamilton, she told me, she's like, Lolita, I think it's great you want to do all these things for other people, but you need to make sure that you individually are being successful, because we need big leaders and big successes so we can even do that much more. So I do try to vary it up between supporting the Latino community, but it's not specific to me. It's very, I'm trying to be scrappy. What's the most effective way of supporting and providing support to many, at the same time focusing on, we need the Mannys of the world to say, hey, I'm not the only Latino or one of the very few Latinos who owns a unicorn company. We need hundreds of Mannys. And in order for that to happen, we need to sometimes say, hey, Manny, don't worry about the other stuff. You focus on you, man, because we need you to go all out. We need Elias to do the same thing. We need me to do the same thing. And I think sometimes it can be hard, but I think finding that balance of what fits you as a human being is important, but also being reasonable with our community, because there are a lot of expectations that we may have. Hey, you come from this and now you think you're all that. Like, I've heard that. And it's like, well, look, in order for me to give more and do more, I actually have to be more. So let's help each other out in doing that. And then if time allows, and if there's an easy way of supporting the community, sure, let's do it. But it shouldn't be like a you must do it ever. I don't agree with that. But having said so, I am looking at companies all over the world, and there is a startup that I'm looking at that's out of Latin America, and there's just opportunity everywhere, right? It's not necessarily associated because I'm a Latina. It's just like, I'm a venture capitalist. I need to make returns. Could this investment be a good one? So being practical, I think, is super important, and being authentic.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, I'm gonna pass it to Elias for the closing remarks. And thank you so much, Manny and Lolita. And muchas gracias a todos.
I'm just going to keep it very, very short. Thank you so much for being here, all of us, all of you. And I want to say that what I'm trying to give as my mission is that I want to share my American dream, my journey, right, to achieving and accomplishing that. And I think my American dream will be to change the face of corporate America. And I want to be surrounded by all of you. I want all of us to be successful and encourage many others and be their role models to do the same, right? So thank you so much for joining me today. Really, really thankful. And I think that this is something that I feel is growing. We're creating something very special and building a tight network of people that are gonna be able to go. I love that, Manny, like, let's go and let's pay people's colleges. Robert F. Smith, CEO of Vista, it's like, is doing that at large.
Yeah.
I want us to get to that level, right? So we can, I started already with 2 scholarships back at USF, just like I was back, but I want to do more. So thank you so much for all your kind words, and stay authentic and go have some great food today. Thank you very much, everyone. And
Thank you. Thank you, Lolita. Thank you, Pedro.
Bye,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Gracias.